Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Bertel. I'm the chair of the Libertarian Party of New York Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. And tonight we have a few guests with us here, a few committee members and then guests. Tim O'Connor, committee member. Jim Dayton, committee member. Cody Anderson is privileging us with his presence. He's the state chair of the LPNY. And Dr. Mark Lugowski, a former state chair of the LPNY for a couple of years, back 2015, 16, 17, something like that. And what we're going to do is kind of review some of the legislation that's going on in New York, what we support and what we oppose, and try to rally people to kind of help us out with our efforts to stop bad legislation or push along good legislation. The state legislative session effectively ends around the end of June, so we got around another 8 weeks or so to try to get through a few good bills or stop them before this session. Then there'll be another session probably in summer, perhaps in the fall. And we're missing a couple people that dropped out there, so I'll go on to a summary page of some bills that we're working on, and then we'll come back. Hopefully a couple people will be back with us. So let me get to screen 2 here. There we go. So people can snapshot this screen if you want, and that'll help. So a few bills that we want to blitz on to move forward and or either advance them forward or stop them. So I'll just do a quick blitz of these bills. There's Senate Bill S-324, which curtails the lying to suspects by the police, and we certainly support that. We want police to be honest in talking to suspects. We don't want them entrapping people, so that's a bill we're in support of. There's a bill S-3464, failure to retreat. We oppose that. That's where a police officer orders someone to stop, and they have to stay at least 25 feet away, and that can actually be charged with a felony. We think this could be a hindrance toward transparency and monitoring of police action. A-4602 prohibits mandatory vaccination for COVID-19. We support that. That's kind of a good pushback against the many bills that are pushing forward medical tyranny of one form or another. And we'll hopefully have a guest on later to talk about that. S-2584, A-6616, mandatory sex education state standards. We oppose this. We prefer to see that in a local level. They're trying to have sex education for very young children. We think that's a little inappropriate. S-1144, A-5576, parole form for technical violations. We support that. We don't want people to be found in violation of parole over ticky-tack reasons. I actually discussed this with my brother, who's a corrections officer, or not a corrections officer, sorry, a parole officer in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. And he says in PA they're pretty lenient, and actually we could stand to move more the direction of Pennsylvania on these leniency ideas. S-5269, nursing home regulations. That's a prohibition of for-profit nursing homes. We oppose that. I got 2 people to add here. Okay, the people dropped out. We think that's a hindrance not only to nursing homes, but there's a lot of multi-purpose facilities. Actually, I'm doing an interview for my mother tomorrow of a facility that has independent living plus assisted living plus a nursing home under the same campus. And that happens to be not for profit, but some are for profit. You can't call it all evil. And I think by regulating the nursing homes, it's going to have a tailspin of creating shortages of independent living and assisted living housing that seniors need. A-1248A, marijuana legalization. Hey, it passed. There was good articles put out by the LPNY and a lot of things we don't like about it. It did pass, but there's a lot of rework, in particular shortening the time frame to allow for people to grow and participate in the in marijuana instead of 100. I think there's some procedures are being delayed like a year and a half. S-1185, extended producer responsibility. We opposed that. We had I did a talk on that last week. We kind of went into the Jones Act also. This is a far-reaching concept intended to kind of push taxpayers out of the way and stop them from complaining about how their garbage and recycling is handled, and pass the buck on to the large corporations to handle it. And Germany's tried it for a decade and it hasn't worked there. We don't think it'll work here. S5377, expanded use of the blight label to declare property abandoned. We oppose that. That's part of the surplus proceeds problem that we'll get into later. We don't want the over application of these labels of blight and abandonment. S3130, require notice to owners of property and foreclosure of their right to surplus proceeds. We support that. Again, we'll get into this issue more later, but that's a good bill to support. And then finally, a mask wearing mandate, S1005. We, of course, oppose that, and we'll have a guest to talk about that later, too. So now I think we have Liza up. So Liza is going to tell us about something going on in Ithaca that's a pretty special and unique approach to law enforcement. And I want to get her on early because she gets up early in the morning, so we'd like to get her on first. You ready, Liza? Liza?
I am.
Okay, you're up.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm not sure if you guys can see me. Perfect. So basically what's going on in Ithaca, they passed a reform of the police system. They're going to totally revamp and redo how policing works in Ithaca. And they have studied so many different things that other cities have done, whatever else, and they basically come to and mental health specialists deal with a lot of the things that are going to go on. But from everything that I've been able to find out, they are not sure how they're going to start it. So right now they are fundraising money to form a committee to start it.
So even though the mayor pushed it and it got passed through the legislature, I think, yeah, the mayor pushed this idea and it got passed through the legislature, but there's still work to be done before it can really hit the ground and get moving. There were some protests against this.
Correct. Their first point of business, from what they say, is they are going to repurpose the SWAT truck. So they are trying to figure out if they want to make it a community resource vehicle, a way to deliver food to impoverished communities. They are trying to find an alternative use for the SWAT vehicle. They said that's first thing on the agenda.
Okay, good.
Other than that, they are trying to figure out they're going to rework the whole system.
Okay.
So I'm not sure there's great intentions there.
I think she's cutting out again. Yeah, I think you keep cutting out. I don't hear you too well. All right, let me move on to the next topic then. So keep us updated. Maybe next meeting we'll have more information as this moves forward. So Jim, why don't we move on to you and give us an update on our scaffold law.
All of your windows keep buffering.
Okay, we're going to move on to Jim now to talk about scaffold law.
All right. So basically what's going on now is there's these federal projects that we want to get done here in New York State. And a lot of the contractors, the mayors and stuff like that, which was in an article that I believe you posted, Rich, on your Twitter, they're actually trying to get Buttigieg, our transportation, national transportation authority there, to not go through as long as they use the Scaffold Act, basically, which would cost tens of thousands of millions, who knows how much, on whatever project they're working on. But I think this might open up the door to our state legislators starting to think a little bit about this when they want a project done by the federal government and the federal government says, no, that's going to cost too much because of this, and we're the last state left with this law. I think it's going to start opening some eyes, and we just got to keep punching in and sending messages, emails, whatever, to our legislators to say, get rid of this thing because it's only hurting us. That's pretty much what's going on right now.
Go ahead, Tim.
May I add something there? When we're looking at the schooling situation in New York State, Scaffold Law, or infrastructure bills, Scaffold Law costs hundreds of millions of dollars on a yearly basis in the state of New York. That's why we want to stand against this. The people that get paid out from this program are already covered by several other programs. Like if your employer's negligent and you get injured on the job, you can sue them for extra money. You're already covered by workers' comp. We're not out to screw a guy over that gets injured. What we're saying is when we look at the problems in New York State and that our infrastructure costs us millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars more than it costs in other states, that's why the Scaffold Law is a problem, period. And thank you, Jimmy, for putting this stuff out there. I appreciate the work you're doing. I just felt like I had to add to that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I guess there could be people listening in here that never heard of the Scaffold Law before. Just to piggyback to what Tim said, just to put it in a few sentences, to explain it. New York is the only state in the country where there cannot be contributory negligence on the part of an employee who gets hurt in a gravity-related injury due to some of their own contributing factors. For example, being drunk or not using issued safety equipment or something like that. The contractor is always 100% guilty, regardless of if the employee is even the least bit at fault. And to have contributory negligence, at least there's a chance then to have the lawsuits be more reasonable in size. And also, frankly, I think people will be more responsible and safer if they know that if they don't, exercise good care and practice to take care of themselves and be safe, that they won't get a big settlement. So, and actually there's some commercials in Mexico and Puerto Rico and such, they're, kind of laughing about this, saying, yeah, you get hurt and you get this multi-million-dollar settlement. So they're kind of making a joke out of New York State over this. So we've been trying to fix this for years and years. So for anyone that's not at all familiar with the Scaffold Law, that's a quick nutshell of why it's, it's just unreasonable to say that the contractor should be always 100% liable regardless of any other factors. So anything else you wanted to add, Jim?
No, not really. You guys filled in the blanks beautifully. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, and William, I thought might be in, but William Van Helmond is in Suffolk County, and they have a real mess down there with surplus proceeds theft and tax foreclosures and even mortgage foreclosures. And supposedly some of that's even tied into swoop and stop staged accidents. And it's a good God, it's a mess. So in Suffolk, they've been talking to a lawyer from the Institute for Justice to try to move forward. But I think because it's just so broad and complex that the Institute for Justice is kind of almost throwing your hands up in frustration. So we're still trying to move forward down there. But Tim has some interesting stories in Otsego County. And I think that's a little more focused and targeted, and things are moving forward on that. So I'm going to let Tim fill us in on what's happening with the surplus proceeds, tax proceeds, theft problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. First of all, there's a couple things I've got going on. There's a comment about the extended producer responsibility in the comments. And I think that we should explain to a guy like Shane, who works for our local county government, why we, are opposed to extended producer responsibility. But I think we should ask him to visit the show that we did with Colin Graybo of the Cato Institute and how we discussed at length the problems with the extended producer responsibility. Okay. Now, as you brought up, and thank you very much for bringing that up, in Otsego County, we had an instance approximately 2013, 2014, where a Navy veteran who bought his retirement home up in Otsego County ran into some health trouble, got a year behind on his taxes, delivered all the money before the tax auction, and then they still seized his property and sold it at a tax auction. There's a couple things that we're working on with this. Now, everything that I do when I do these things, I was on a show with Kevin Wilson the other day. We talk about, we have to get people to understand what the problems are and who gets hurt and who's impacted. So if you guys go check out that link, Save the Forest Farm, you'll meet Robert Forrest. Robert Forrest, and with some assistance from crazy guys like me, going to go ahead and do a documentary about how his property was taken from him, how they actively pursue in Oswego County unmortgaged properties to foreclose on, and how if it's a mortgage property, more than likely you can reclaim your property up until days after deadlines sometimes. So those are the things that we're working on. Now, you mentioned a law that we support, the right to claim your excess proceeds. Up until recently, all over New York, when they sell your property at tax auction, they could say you owe $20,000 in taxes. You sold, the property sells at a tax auction for $100,000. There's an $80,000 pot of money sitting there. And the county claims that, keeps it, and uses it, goes into their general fund. No effort or attempt is made to return those excess proceeds to people. And I think people need to understand just how horrible that is. People don't give up their properties because, oh my God, I hate Oswego County or whatever. They're in financial hardship. And if the county takes that money, seizes it, and uses it for its own use, think of the damage that's being done to people that are already in a problematic situation. Nobody doesn't want to pay their taxes, man. Everybody wants to do the right thing. Taxes are too high. I don't think we can argue that. But the bottom line is so we got to support bills like S3130. It's got to get to the floor. It's got to get voted on because it is an actual improvement in the situation in New York State. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Tim. How are we doing on time here? Well, I'm going to give you some good time. I hope Liz has gotten through her technical difficulties and we can have a good conversation. She was chopping up quite a bit before. So we have with us Elizabeth Glass, who ran for New York State Senate 27 in Manhattan in 2020 against Hoylman, who arguably he was arguably the most tyrannical legislature in New York State when it comes to medical issues. You know, if there's a medical issue, he feels like he knows better, whether it's masks or vaccines or anything else. He knows better than anyone what they should do with their life. So he's been on board. He was instrumental in abolishing the religious exemption in New York State back in 2019, and he's had quite a few other toxic bills related to that since then. And so I'd like to have her come on because she's been quite busy advocating for medical freedom now moving forward against mask mandates and such. I won't take her any much of her thunder. So hopefully Liz will all hear you well. Good one, and you're up.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go. Good. Okay. Yes.
Hi. Thank you so much. Sorry about the technical problems. I think I solved it. So yes, my name is Elizabeth Glass. I ran for New York State Senate in District 27 in Manhattan last year, and I challenged the sponsor of the repeal of the religious exemption. And 2 of my 4 children were kicked out of school in June of 2019 because of the repeal of the religious exemption. And so at that time, I became an activist and had all these protests, and they weren't really accomplishing anything. So I said, we really have to challenge this person. So I kind of shifted the protests to make it, the goal was to find someone to challenge him. He was also sponsoring bills so that kids can get shots without parental knowledge or consent, and also bills so children have to get an annual flu shot. There was also a bill to mandate the Gardasil, the HPV shot, for school. So that really enraged parents throughout the state. And so I organized on Facebook a group called Vote Hoylman Out. And I made this groups to challenge, to support the person who was going to challenge him. And so we couldn't find anyone to challenge him. So ultimately, someone told me that they were giving Gardasil to children at New York City schools without parental knowledge or consent. And at that time, I didn't really know about the whole agenda. I just knew about the truth about the agenda. So I thought that it's so evil to do that to kids. So I just decided to challenge him myself. And so the goal in the primary was to get 20% of the vote to show that we could potentially win in November. And I scored 34% of the in-person vote in the Democratic primary. And it exposed his political vulnerability. And so now he's retiring from the Senate later this year. So it's a huge victory for the medical freedom movement, because here I was, a completely unknown, completely inexperienced candidate. I have no experience in politics whatsoever. And we had very, very, very little money. He had 1.6 million in his war chest. And we voted him out. We were successful in our endeavor. And so in New York, he was the real problem, Brad Hoylman in New York. And in California, the real problem was Dr. Pan. Dr. Pan just got a, usually in politics, the way it works, it's, if you're state level, usually they give you a promotion if you do what you're told and what have you. And so Dr. Pan is getting a promotion. He's being appointed to I can't remember the name of the alphabet agency, but a very prominent position in Washington. And because we challenged Hoylman, he's running for city level government. So it's a step down, which is really unheard of in politics. So that's my spiel right now. So now, right now I am the admin for a group called Stop Health Passports. It's a private Facebook group. What I did was I took Vote Hoylman out, and I just changed the name. I said, here we have 1,200 New York state residents who really care about freedom. And these digital passports are, the greatest threat to our liberties in our country's history. And anyone who's not on the take, who's not being bribed, is against it. So, really organizing people is in my skill set. So that's what I'm very busy doing right now. And the thing is people are not down with these passports. So the group is just exploding in size, which is really wonderful to see. So, and it's also educating people and, so I know you asked me about masks, but my basic thing is I'm for medical freedom. So people want to wear masks. The problem we have now is, of course, they're being forced, and that's absolutely unacceptable. So we're also organizing on that. What I'm seeing, though, in stores is that they're really taking a step back on the mask issue, I think, because they don't want to enrage people, because they really do want to push these passports forward. So that's my interpretation of what's happening with the mask issue in places of public accommodation like stores. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Are you now, or have you ever considered yourself a member of the Libertarian Party?
Yeah. Well, a lot of my political philosophies are very aligned with the libertarians, for sure. And, but the thing is that the real goal with my campaign was to out a very, very, very problematic rep. And so the only way to do that is to challenge them in the primary, to primary them. So the district, the constituency of my district, District 27 in Manhattan, it's, I don't know what it is now, but when I ran, it was 65% Democrat. So there was no way to challenge him as a libertarian. Does that make sense?
Oh,
yeah,
it's
but I had tons
understandable.
of, my campaign was unusual because I probably had more Republicans and libertarians as volunteers on my campaign than Democrats. Well, I had.
It hurts our feelings, but we accept your position. That for now, we accept your position.
Okay.
We all come to liberty in different ways, don't
That's correct.
Well, it's just about, you have a goal, and it's just about achieving that goal. And the goal was to vote this person out. I mean, he's the number 2 in Albany outside of Cuomo. So there was just no other way to do it.
No,
And what happened was, what's that?
We respect your decision making there, and I think you put on an excellent campaign. It's not that, but what we're hearing from you are things that we like to hear from politicians. Okay, it doesn't matter if they're a Democrat, doesn't matter if they're a Republican, doesn't matter if they're in the Green Party. If you're talking about individual rights and individual liberty, that's what we want to hear. So we have an organization that we're building. We obviously would love to have people like you join us, but in the meantime, thank you for sharing your views with us, and you are already on par with where we're at. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to mute myself. If you have any questions, I'm right here. It's very interesting hearing you talk. I mean, I haven't been following the bills as closely because I'm kind of more focused on the passports right now. But it's good to catch up. And Rich has been, all of you, but Rich has been so helpful in terms of that bill A2681B. Are you going to talk about that right now?
Yeah, great segue into that. So we have Cody here, the state chair, and I guess Tony's on vacation this week, but Tony does our PR releases. But 2681 and the sister in the state Senate passed both houses, and I haven't checked today, but they've been delivered to the governor, so waiting for his signature. It's unlikely he will veto them because they were both passed by like a 3/4 majority. But I've been chatting a lot back and forth with Liz because I think we have to form a kind of a united front here, because business interests in New York are objecting to 2681 because this is, what I call it's an OSHA for germs. We're setting up a huge regulatory structure to impose upon businesses, and it's all being punted by the state legislature over to the Department of Health. The legislature should be responsible to develop the law if it's really needed. Instead, they're putting it to the DOH to develop a vast network of regulations, because the bill says, customize by industry. So they're letting the DOH decide, okay, this is appropriate for contractors, this is appropriate for grocery stores, this is appropriate for, manufacturing. And to me, if it needs to get into that kind of nitty gritty detail and customization, the legislature should be working that out. It's an overextension of power for the executive branch to doing this much. And then I think I copied an email to Liz too, and I haven't brought this up too much because I'm wearing multiple hats, but as a mechanical engineer, active in a group called ASHRAE, I was chapter president in 91, 92 for Twin Tiers ASHRAE. That covers 8 counties down and around the Binghamton area. And I actually trained code enforcement officials way back then about our new indoor air quality standard. There's never really been a good connection between indoor environmental control for general purpose use and medical effects. It's always been about comfort. So we're kind of jumping the gun, and even saw a lot of flip-flopping last year about, maybe requiring HEPA filters for air handlers in malls and such, which is just plain impossible. You can't retrofit those air handlers to hold that kind of filter. You need a much more powerful fan. And it was, so they toned back on that to a MERV 13, which is still a pretty good, efficiency. It's expensive, but it's not a high pressure drop, so most equipment can hold it. But all these years we've had ASHRAE standard 62 for air quality. It's never really been looped into the medical community very well. So how are they going to decide what's appropriate for air filtration? We've never really tested performance on capture of germs, and then beyond that, not only capture of germs, but if you capture 90% of the germs of the filter, does that mean a 90% reduction in the chance of someone getting sick in the building? If the concentration's down that much? It's not like measuring particles in a clean room. I mean, we have particle counters for clean rooms that we've used for decades, and we can correlate cleanliness in a clean room with manufacturing defects in semiconductors and things like that. So we've got a lot of engineering and experience behind that. And then for toxic materials with OSHA, we have a lot of experience behind, toxic chemicals and what their effects are. OSHA for germs, the technology is, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, even if the legislature could do something with it. And look at the flip-flopping even on masks. We can't decide, does the mask help or not help? Should you wear it this time or that time? The government's still, flip-flopping back and forth. And you're seeing states that people aren't wearing masks with their COVID cases going down. Other states where people are wearing them like crazy, COVID cases going up. So the science seems very in its infancy to jump forward, build this regulatory framework when we're still very young on the learning curve to figure out what filtration works, what masks work, what other types of PPE works in the industry. But we're going to start regulating before we even know what the hell we're doing. So I just think so. So I think that from that perspective of the business interests, merge that with the people that care about medical freedom. We have to get a united front. The medical freedom, the personal freedom people have to unite with the the business interest people that don't want this swamp of extra liability and added costs, you know, and this whole big can of worms of, and then the private action in 2681, where now people can lawsuits against their employer. You know, if they sneeze in the building, you can now sue your employer because you sneezed at work. So, I mean, it's just the absurdity. It's just going so far, so fast. So anyway, that's my big soapbox moment there on that topic. Cody, you helped with writing the press release we put out on 2681. You have more to add to what we did. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, but what can we do next?
Yeah, we don't honestly, the biggest thing we can do is have, is continue to write our elected representatives, let them know how bad this is for business. I've been a business owner for 25 years. I'm very fortunate. I had a good year last year, and I managed to work through the pandemic and managed not to have my bottom line affected, mostly because one, I don't have employees. Two, I don't have an office that I have to take people's temperature and provide PPE and provide social distancing and all that sort of thing. So for me, I was relatively unaffected, and I worked it out directly with my clients. How I would work with them on the phone, remotely. Wearing a mask or not. Wearing a clown suit, whatever. But for my part, the flexibility of not having employees was really important, as it is, for not having to carry workers' comp and all that sort of thing. So I would say that the burden for the employer, whether it's taxes or whether it's workers' comp premiums, whether it's unemployment premiums, the burden for the employer in New York is already high, and this made it even worse. And for my part, I think it's just we have to find champions. We have to tell our elected representatives, but we Libertarian Party also has to find champions in the legislature who believe what we do and see it the way we see it and are ready to evangelize the real cost to business. And if you can find these areas where you have Democrats in purple districts, I think you can really start to make a difference.
Agreed. Tim, you wanted to add something too?
Yeah, there's a couple of points of emphasis. Number one, and I don't think we can stress this enough, what the government has done is create another bureaucracy that has the power of creating laws and regulations by which employers, small business employers, businesses, firms as small as 10 people can get sued almost automatically. And that's a real problem. That has done damage to business. We've seen OSHA actually dial itself back because it took itself to an extreme and was chasing people out of the state. So that's what they've created. And also, guys, it's really important to note that these clowns exempted themselves and their activities from this law. Okay, that is an absolute fact. They do stuff like this all the time. They should be embarrassed by it, and we have to make them embarrassed by it. So it passed the Assembly, it passed the Senate. Let Cuomo know you don't like this law. I heard a rumor maybe he's thinking that it's too problematic, but you got to let him know. You also got to let your assemblyman know. You got to let your senator know. And my assemblyman and my senator both know how I feel about it, and they both voted against it. Not that they were listening to me, but they did vote against it. So if we don't get vocal, if we don't start talking, 30 cat ladies control the entire state of New York. That's the bottom line. That's what Tom Stebbins said, and I agree with him.
Yes. And also, I just want to throw in there, there was a certain governor, pretty sure it was Cuomo, said, blame me if, with the sickness and whatnot. And then all of a sudden this bill came forward, and instead of him taking the responsibility, now it's every business owner in the nation or in the state. If someone gets sick in their workplace, oh, it's not me, it's that guy's boss. They did it. Just my.
Can I just
Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry.
Well, I just want to say a few things just in terms of the legal challenges to the state of emergency. There's an organization called NewYorkStandsUp.org, NYStandsUp.org, and excellent attorneys challenging the state of emergency. And I encourage everyone to support that organization. I vetted the attorneys, and they're amazing. They've beat Cuomo in the past. They're true patriots. That's number one. Number two, I'm not sure how much y'all have gone down the rabbit hole, so to speak, but because of my campaign, I've gone, really faced the enemy head on, and we're at war right now. It's an economic war, and these reps, they're all puppets. They're all puppets for the globalists, the bankers, the technocrats. They are completely controlled. The U.S. Supreme Court had a decision, Citizens United, and it's legal for to give unlimited amounts of money to these reps. Like my former opponent, had $1.6 million in his war chest. So they're completely controlled. So that's very important to know that, they represent corporations 100%, and they represent the people 0%. Not the corporations, but the globalists. So, their goal is to destroy businesses. That, make no mistake, they're doing it slowly, death by 1,000 cuts. But this bill is a very, very key part of that. And so how do we fight it? I mean, you can complain to the reps, but that's like let's say your neighbors, someone's planning, mobsters are planning on robbing all of your neighbors. Do you tell the mobsters, please don't do that? It's their mobsters. The best thing to do is warn your neighbors. And so what my group is trying to do is trying to raise awareness about these bills, about this tyranny, and organize massive civil disobedience. Just telling all these businesses to stand down and say no. What I think also what happened was all the billionaires met in New York City in 2010, Oprah, Bill Gates, Bloomberg, and others. And they had a meeting, and they weren't very transparent about what they were doing. But I think that they were planning all this. Certainly my former opponent was very instrumental in this whole, hijacking of humanity. And I don't want to go into that now, but for one thing that they did was they formed like all these alliances for these businesses. I think that they were just bought. I don't think that they were not effectively representing the people in their members. So I don't want to go into details. I don't have proof of that, but it seems very clear that that's what happened. So it's at the point now where instead of protests, what people really need to do is they need to organize, stand down, and just like in prohibition, tell these. I'm looking at the bill right now, A2681. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. They just want to screw these businesses, and we have to say no. Just like with prohibition. People, they said you can't drink. People just have to collectively say no and ignore it, and that's all that really was what needs to happen. I mean, the problem is right now is that people are so brainwashed. I mean, they're starting to wake up though. I live in East Village, Manhattan, and I saw it was very interesting on Saturday. You can tell like where people are at by the masks, if they're wearing masks outside. And there were a lot of people not wearing masks. So people are starting to become aware of the agenda. So it's a very key thing right now to educate. I think it's important to tell the reps, your assembly member, your senator, your state senator, and Cuomo how you feel. But they're criminals, in my opinion, the ones who voted for this. I mean, look at this. It's going to destroy businesses. We need to educate these businesses, organize them, and collectively say no. That's
and Liz, the worst part is that when the legislature passes laws like this, they create a narrative that businesses are responsible for every bad thing that might happen to an employee, and that's the worst part of it. So you create it's a cascading system, right? So the legislature says that employers are responsible for guaranteeing safety from viruses and fungus and bacteria. Then a employee makes a claim against insurance claims go up for that employer and other employers, and it's everything eats itself eventually. So this causes, again, it's not that there's an actual danger. Again, it creates a narrative that there is a danger, and in the end, a virus is going to virus, or a bacteria is going to bacteria, and you can take reasonable precautions like the restaurant industry already does, to protect against foodborne illness and things like that. But in the end, this is just another it's another ploy to to line the pockets of the trial attorneys and the insurance companies, unfortunately.
And destroy businesses. That's really what their goal is.
Correct.
Slowly, slowly,
That's
what
how much is the goal, but it's the ultimate result. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, any scenario is bad. I mean, at the very least, anyone that voted for this bill has very, very poor judgment, in my opinion. I mean, maybe they weren't corrupt and looking to destroy businesses, but to pass this bill, I mean, if you read the thing, I mean, if you have any kind, I mean, people in the state legislature should have some level of knowledge of impact on what they're doing, and to vote yes for this thing. And unfortunately, almost 3/4 of them voted yes. It just tells you how extensive the poor judgment and inability to serve the public, how pervasive that is now in our legislature when we've got 3/4 of them passing garbage like this. It's a disgrace. I don't know what else to say, but.
Well, it's very short-sighted. Again, it's this prevailing view of the progressive government in Albany that believes that government can solve all problems. Well, it can't. This is really the crux of their argument, that we can protect you. They cannot, and frequently they make the problem or the cure worse than the disease, figuratively or literally.
I mean, what a problem I have with a lot of the freedom movement in New York right now, and I've called them on it, is that they should be doing what I did with Hoylman, is just, comb their hair, print up some flyers. Where are my flyers? Oh, here's my flyers. They're super cheap. I just made flyers and challenged these people, challenge these reps that are doing these things. It brings awareness to these issues. And I mean, it's way more than just A2681. I mean, their goal, the World Economic Forum's their stated goal is that we will own nothing and be happy by the year 2030. They don't want us to own anything. We're all going to lose all of our property, all of our assets. That's their goal. It's a slavery system. So it's very difficult to come to terms with, but it's very important for people to know when you're in this kind of a battle. It's important to know the goals of your enemy so that you can prepare appropriately. So,
well, it's the continued use of force, which is what we libertarians are against. It's the force of government is being used against us to keep us subjugated. That's tyranny. That's the definition right there.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right. That too.
I mean, if I had $1 for every time someone asked me about the bill A416, the concentration camp bill, I mean, just the fact that they have a bill on the books that they can, forcibly drag you out of your home, separate your family, force quarantine you, and force inject you against your will, that's a proposed bill. And, they're telling us, they're telling us what their plans are by having that bill. And the thing is from what I understand, and this is why I wanted to see that bill, S5, the new, what was it? Excuse me, it's here. 5357, which I think it replaced it's the new emergency powers. From my understanding, basically if there's a public health emergency, which there is at the federal level, which most people don't even realize, it gives them very, very, very expansive powers. It's a very, very, very dangerous situation that we're in. So, but they're doing it not just in the United States, but they're doing it across the globe. But they're rolling it out very carefully in the states because we have the Second Amendment. So they've passed these laws that say exactly what they're going to do, and then they say, oh, we'll never use it like that, and which is really what they end up doing, right?
and under we saw it happen a year ago. March is that Governor Cuomo became the dictator of New York. He became the chief lawmaker and adjudicator of everything. And this is unfortunately where an emboldened legislature with a supermajority will take us unless we speak up and start to resist.
Yep. Dr. Grabowski, do you have a few comments you want to make tonight, as long as you're here as a guest?
I have a lot of comments I'd like to make, but I'm going to hold off for a while, only because they're a little strange, because I'm not quite sure how to put it. I could give you an example. For instance, Elizabeth, I know you're working very hard within the Democratic Party to get some of these evil people out of office, but the Libertarian Party really only has two tools. If we ever get into power, it's setting expectations and affiliating with people that we want to affiliate with. Affiliation is one of the most strongest political statements you can make. Affiliating with a political party by enrolling in that party is a 365-day-a-year statement that you agree with what that party is trying to do. And so you get rid of one person, the next person is going to be pursuing the same path. And you're proving that with your affiliation. That's why I would like to see people start leaving the two big parties when they see them doing stuff they don't appreciate and don't want to have happen, and either go blank or join the Libertarian Party because we're opposing it. Your affiliation is the strongest political statement you could make, stronger than any demonstration, any petitions that you get out there, any bill you overturn, because it's saying you agree with the political philosophy of how the government should run and how people should organize in society. So I have a lot of comments like that, and my real purpose for being here is to stay on top of the redistricting that's going to be happening shortly, because I would like to see the state go back to the constitutional structure that we had, where every county had at least one representative in the assembly, and every assembly district ended at the county line. So if the county had 2 or 3 assembly districts, they were within the county, and the county determined those districts, not the state or some agency. And what's happening now is there's a big push to divide New York State into 2 or 3 pieces, or to insert a whole level of government between the counties and the state. We don't have a republic right now in New York State. We should have a republic. And if we're going to divide the state into anything, it should be into 62 separate counties, because those are the recognized regions in the state. So I would like to just stay on top of that bill, see where it's going, see which direction they're going to go, and then if necessary, file a lawsuit, because one individual can file a lawsuit and they have to hear it. That's the law.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Grabowski.
Can I reply?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I certainly adhere to many of the philosophies of the Libertarian Party, but when you're running for office, you have to take into consideration the district that you're running in, and just the reality of what is before you. And we have the primaries in New York City are very, very critical because so many people are Democrat, and that's why I had to run as a Democrat in the primaries, because the only way I'm a little disappointed.
I'm a little disappointed with New York City, because when we do the political quiz, there's only 2 groups in New York City. There's Democrats and there are Libertarians, according to the political quiz. There's almost no Republicans and there's almost no Green Party members down there. And the Libertarian Party has been sitting back, just letting the Democrats have control, just like the Republicans are just letting them have control. And I think that's a problem that we need to start getting people in New York City to start registering Libertarian. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but our party was set up as a social group. And even our, I'm going to be kicking out an email to the state committee shortly, but our Amendment 4, or Article 4 in our rules, basically says that the party is here to extend liberty to the extreme. And the the problem is we've been interpreting that as making sure that people had the right to be within any party they want and still call themselves a libertarian. Cross-endorse because that's extending freedom to the limits, and it's been destroying the party. And so what we need to do is just get people to understand that there's only 4 political philosophies. They already embrace one, but if they're in the wrong political party, they're not supporting the political party the political philosophy that they want to see created. So we have millions of people that are in the wrong party, and we demonstrate that every time we do a political quiz. We just need to get them a reason to join the Libertarian Party, and the biggest reason is because when you join, you're now standing up for what you believe. You put your name on the line, you put your whole self on the line. This is what I believe. This is what I want to see happen. As soon as you join the other party, you're saying it doesn't matter. What I believe doesn't matter. I'm going to go with this group because maybe they'll agree with me someday.
I think in particular local races, we really should be trying harder to win under our banner. I think the local races in particular and county races, we had in Broome County, Broome County District Attorney Mike Korchak won in 2019 under the Libertarian label. So that was a very, county-wide large DA race. So he was able to squeak by under our label. So it can be done, but certainly starting with the local counties where we can get the most traction. All right, we're coming up on close to an hour. So just want to have closing thoughts. Maybe Jim, you have anything to add? Any closing thoughts you want to throw in tonight?
Not really. I mean, everybody just we need all the help we can get. Contacting your legislators, your senators, Cuomo, whoever. We got to start emailing them, calling them, letting them know, that we're paying attention. They don't think anybody's paying attention. We got to show them that there's people paying attention. And we're not happy with this, or this is awesome. Please back it up. And we need all the help we can get that done. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Tim, you have any closing thoughts?
First of all, Elizabeth, you've had some analogies tonight that just blew me away. I enjoyed your mafia to the government analogy. I thought that was wonderful, appropriate, and perfect. Dr. Gagowski, thank you very much for your comments. I certainly understand the position that you take, because when I hear Elizabeth talk about liberty and talk about individual rights and fighting against things like medical tyranny and the encroaching governmental nanny state that we can't deny exists, we also have to accept that the two parties both participate in that. One party comes up with a crazy idea. The other party says, well, let's manage that idea just a little bit better. And it doesn't matter which side you're on. They both do it, and they do it all the time. As libertarians, we do, like Imi said, we need your help. We're here fighting our battles. Our voice will be amplified if you join in, obviously. Now, I know we're on the right side of history. And again, I think you should consider joining us. Donate money to the LPNY. We got great guys like Cody running the show. We got great guys like Rich, nonstop energy with his legislative affairs committee, with his actions on the executive committee, with planning events like this. Guys, we can use your help. And all the comments out there tonight, guys, some of the best people that I've met through my campaign were out there tonight supporting the concepts that we were talking about. So, guys, let's bring it all together. Let's keep working on it. Reach out to your assemblyman. Reach out to your senator. Reach out to your local guys. Support your local guys. Brian LaRusso was in the audience tonight, running for Hardwick Town Supervisor. He doesn't want to admit he's a libertarian either, but he is a libertarian, and we need that energy. He's got a lot of great energy. He's got a lot of great ideas. He's on the right side of history as well. Holy cow, Stephanie, how are you? Stephanie ran for God, Stephanie, tell me what you ran for. It was up near Onondaga. She did a great job. She was cross-endorsed Libertarian Republican in Onondaga County. And I can't remember what seat she was running for. But, all right, Onondaga County will lose Catco's seat due to redistricting. It is in a Democratic stronghold also. As you know, we just lost another seat. Yeah, we did. New York State's losing population, guys. You've seen my show. I've talked about it 100 million times. New York State is unequivocally losing population. There's no way to, there's no denying it. Sorry to monopolize. I got onto my own show mode right there. I apologize. Thank you very much, Rich. I appreciate it.
Cody, you have some final thoughts?
You know, support liberty locally, because I have to say Liz has done a great job sort of towing liberty in a place where you would not consider to be liberty oriented. When people get to living in close proximity, they get very uncomfortable with letting people live their own lives, and there's a lot of NIMBYism. There's a lot of people looking to government to run their affairs because people don't want to talk to their neighbors, right? So from my perspective, the fight for liberty has to begin locally, and someone like Liz, can be a great model for that in New York City, and I think for the rest of us who are in. I'm somewhere between the capital region and the central New York. We can argue about that later. But up here in western central northern capital region New York, there's a lot more liberty mindedness and room for it. From my perspective, we have to start locally with liberty. And to Rich's point, we absolutely have to run candidates at the local level and fight things like zoning and local taxes, where we have where most of our tax burden comes from, property taxes, and a lot of the excess proceeds theft that occurs locally. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Mark, you have any final thoughts, Dr. Glukowski?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate being here and hope to be in the next meetings.
Okay. And Liz, you were our guest tonight. I'll let you close up.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I think a lot of the issues that we're facing is not a Republican or Democrat, Green Party, Libertarian, which I love. I love the Libertarians, but it's really a freedom versus tyranny issue. And all the parties really need to unite to fight the threats ahead of us. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, thank you for being here. I think we're just about up to an hour, so I'm going to close out, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for listening in and share and like and get this message around. We're trying to build our movement to have more impact and more effect.
Have a good night.
Great.
Night.
Have a good night, everybody.